Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So it's getting deep, it's getting serious, it's getting real serious and real fast. The WBC president, he clapped back after Turki Al-Sheikh vowed to shut down all of these organizations. In Turki's own words, he said with his new promotional company and him collaborating with Dana White, they are going to crush everything. When he says he's going to crush everything, he's talking about the organizations. He's talking about the other promoters, the competition, all of the sanctioning bodies, from the WBA to the IBF to the WBO and the WBC. Today was the press conference of Canelo Alvarez versus William Scope, and we've seen Canelo Alvarez be instructed by Turki Al-Sheikh to disregard the WBC belt, not pose with it. And this was just the beginning of the new boxing world order. Well, the WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman, he was obviously not happy with what he's seen on that stage, and this is what he had to say in response.
What is that? The Ring magazine is a magazine. I don't know why media and champions and promoters give any credit to a Ring magazine belt, which only threatens the credibility of the sport. I am very upset because they just declared a few days ago that the rankings of the organizations are corrupt. And if you touch my WBC, I'm gonna fight back. I don't care about the Ring magazine because they are a business. They make money. They are biased. And that is not boxing. Boxing is what you see here. The world of boxing united to make boxing better and safer. A paper magazine awarding a belt has no meaning. Of course, fighters like it because it gives them positive news. But look at this decision, completely arbitrarily. I hope that this understand and stop media giving any value to a magazine belt.
And there is just so much to unpack, I almost don't know where to start. The WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman, he has a problem with Turki Al-Sheikh implying that the sanctioning bodies are corrupt. Now, let's just start with the WBC for a second. It was the WBC that created a fake franchise belt to protect fighters like Canelo Alvarez and Lomachenko from fighting their very dangerous number one contenders. Lomachenko, he was able to avoid the number one contender, Devin Haney. That's how Devin Haney became the WBC champion, because Lomachenko refused to fight his mandatory. And when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, he refused to fight his number one contender, Jermall Charlo. So they reached out to the WBC president and told the WBC president, we have a problem. We don't want to fight our mandatories. So that's when the president, the WBC president, he came out and said, you know what? We'll just make up this belt, the franchise belt, and we'll say this is justification for you to avoid your mandatory. Therefore, we'll give a belt to Devin Haney and Jermall Charlo. That way it does not look like you vacated the belt. Guys, that is corruption at its finest. So it's so ironic that the WBC president is acting as if he is offended that someone would even imply that his organization is corrupt, when the WBC is giving out fake belts to protect them from their mandatories. The whole purpose of having a ranking system is so the number one contender can work his way up the ladder and fight for a title. But because of the corruption that exists in the sport of boxing, a number one contender still can't get a title shot. Why? Because now the WBC created some fake belt called the franchise belt that does not even exist today. The belt was only made for fighters like Canelo Alvarez and Lomachenko. And then you have the WBA that literally has racist judges working and judging fights. So the WBA announced that they were going to suspend Judge Gloria Martinez-Rizzo indefinitely after her highly controversial scorecard in the Michael Fox-Gabriel Mastre fight. We find out immediately after that she has a long history of posting racist messages about black people on Twitter. Despite fighting all this out, the WBA, they actually brought her back to judge fights again. They basically just waited until the news died down and brought her back to work as if nothing even happened. Only in boxing would a racist judge still have a job as a boxing judge. That is corruption at its finest. Then you have the IBF president, a man that's caught on camera taking bribes to give fighters higher rankings that they don't even deserve.
Kushner is on the brink of realizing his dream, a multi-million-dollar deal that guarantees the highlight. But a year ago, he was at the lowest point of his career as a promoter. He was a key witness in a federal case that investigated corruption in boxing, a bribery scandal.
Christmas tree.
It involved a top official of one of the world's biggest boxing organizations, Bob Lee Sr., the president of the International Boxing Federation, the IBF.
That's what King would do. Yeah, keep it in the family. I mean, it don't make no sense.
The criminal investigation provided an opportunity to clean up the sport. Mob dominance of boxing had waned by 1965, when the mob's man, Sonny Liston, lost to a 22-year-old Cassius Clay by the so-called Phantom Punch. It was one of the most controversial upsets in boxing history. In a sport that was so corrupt, one authority stood out: Ring Magazine, the boxing industry's Bible since the 1930s. But by the 1970s, it too would become mired in scandal.
Ring Magazine was a very respected organization, and the Ring ratings were given a great deal of respect within the boxing industry. If a fighter could say that he was the #1 rated middleweight in terms of the Ring Magazine ratings, that meant that he was almost guaranteed to get a title shot. And then the ratings got corrupted. ABC ran a boxing tournament based largely on the Ring ratings. The ratings were phony. The tournament fell apart. And in the aftermath of that, the TV networks had to look someplace else for ratings.
The answer was sanctioning bodies, private organizations that rated fighters and approved title fights for a fee. After the Ring Magazine rating scandal, they controlled the title fights. Over the next 30 years, some 16 of these bodies would spring up, all with official-sounding acronyms, and the number of world titles exploded.
TV likes to advertise fights as a championship fight. If you can put in your advertisement in the newspaper, Fighter A versus Fighter B for the IBF, the WBA, the WBO, the IBC middleweight championship, to the average fan who doesn't know a whole lot about boxing, that has a much broader appeal. And so the more championship organizations you have, the more championships they are.
In theory, boxers should have protection through their ranking. It allows them to be matched with like opponents. But the reality can be very different. And the reason for that lies in the way sanctioning bodies rate fighters.
Each sanctioning organization has their own rules about how to administer the fights, who should fight who and when, and especially when it comes to fight the champion fighting. So what they've devised basically is a system where any of the top contenders, 1 through 15, are entitled to fight the champion. He can't fight anybody outside of the top guys in the ratings. He has to fight someone within the top 15. A perfect example is Mike Tyson. He's #1 in the WBC. He's #7 in the WBA. He's #8 in the IBF. He's not even ranked in the WBO. So, I mean, it's a perfect example of the arbitrariness of this whole thing.
Each of the sanctioning bodies has a ratings chairman whose own evaluation is the most important. Doug Beavers was chairman of the IBF's ratings committee for almost 14 years. With such power invested in one person and so much riding on the ratings, it's a role that's open to corruption.
I liked being the ratings chairman.
He enjoyed it a little too much. Beavers became the bagman for the IBF, collecting cash from promoters and delivering it to the organization's president, Bob Lee Sr. Money, he says, was paid to secure higher rankings for the promoters' fighters, with Beavers getting a 25% cut. In 1996, the U.S. government got a tip-off about corruption in the IBF. It started investigating ratings chairman Doug Beavers' boss, the president and founder, Bob Lee Sr. Beavers agreed to cooperate with the government in return for non-prosecution. His monthly ratings meetings with Bob Lee Sr. took place in a Virginia hotel. He agreed to wear a wire, and the FBI videotaped the meetings from a stakeout next door.
What we saw was not so much evidence that there's any kind of fixed fights, but that it's much easier to fix the ratings, because the ratings determine who fights for the title. And if you can fix the ratings, you can essentially fix who fights for the title. And title fights is what determines money.
And I figure if they'll come up with $50,000 for a regional fight, if we got them in position for a USBA or a world title fight.
When they were discussing the ratings, it wasn't based on the win-loss of the boxer, the win-loss record of the boxer, or the caliber of the opponent of the boxer that they fought, or even the how well they fought the fight. It was based on who the promoter was. It was based upon whether there was monies paid in order to get the boxer rated. The bigger the promoter, the larger the sanctioning fees, and that's what really mattered to this organization.
As we went over the ratings, each weight class, if there was a fighter that I guess that the manager or promoter had paid money or something else, gifts or whatever, President Lee would say, can you move this guy up? Or we got to take care of this guy. You paid him money and you got the advantage. So that's it only takes one person to corrupt the whole system, because then the other people got to pay just to keep the playing field level.
The undercover surveillance videos and tapes that show people paid money for ratings. People paid money for sanctions. What did Cedric Kushner pay all that money for? What did Bob Arum pay all that money for? It's now a proven fact, despite the mixed verdict, that promoters and managers pay for ratings. Ratings are for sale. The definition of a contender is for sale. Bobby Lee took that money.
Kushner and Bob Arum testified at the trial. Both were later fined by the New York and Nevada State Athletic Commissions for conduct unbecoming. Arum a total of $175,000, and Kushner $275,000.
So these are just the bodies that were discovered. Imagine how many other bodies are buried under that house. Boxing has always been the Wild Wild West and runs rife with corruption. By the way, I'll put the link up for that documentary. The video is called FBI Sting on Boxing In and Out of the Ring. So what I just showed you guys is just scratching the surface. Going back to the WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman. We all know all of the favors that he has done for Canelo Alvarez. And like I told you, Lomachenko before, what we don't know for sure is that they have to pay. Did Canelo and Lomachenko have to pay for those fake franchise belts? Those belts that protected them from certain mandatory opponents. David Benavidez, he moves up to 175, and the WBC immediately orders the fight between Bivol and Benavidez. But when Benavidez was at 168, he was chasing Canelo for years, the number one contender, and the WBC never forced that fight. Now, just imagine if it was Turki Al-Sheikh in the WBC's position. Imagine if Turki Al-Sheikh, he was in charge of all of those sanctioning bodies. We would have got all of these fights. Or Canelo, he would have had to completely vacate, and he would have been irrelevant. So it is pretty rich to hear the WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman, talk about corruption in the sport. This is also a man who protected boxers like Canelo Alvarez and other Mexican fighters when they tested positive for PEDs. In fact, Mauricio Suleiman was the only person in the entire sport that defended Canelo Alvarez for outright cheating. So when it comes to corruption, this man has done it all. And these are only the things that has reached the surface. We don't even know what he has been doing behind closed doors. But I tell you this, it is a new day And it's going to be hard for him to keep that up because there's definitely a new sheriff in town, and his name is Turki Al-Sheikh. With that being said, I'm going to wrap this video up. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. Let me tell you guys about Issa Israel Law Firm. It is a full-service legal practice based in Denver, Colorado, an emerging hub for combat sports and high-altitude training. If you're a fighter inside or outside of the ring and you need a law firm you can trust to fight for you, visit thefighterfirm.com or email help@iilawfirm.com. Legal representation is usually limited to plaintiffs or defendants in Colorado, but iFirm can help anyone in the world with trademarking their business name, logos, and U.S. immigration issues. This brother has been my attorney for a while and helped guide me through all kinds of business and civil issues, so make sure you guys go to thefighterfirm.com. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, the fever blisters, diabetic ulcers, this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called LO Deki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to lodeki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.